Welcome to On the Line. I'm Christine Williams. Coming up for discussion on our Viewpoints panel. Can our Prime Minister be accused of jumping on the bandwagon for votes? Later on, we'll be talking about taking advantage of the summer holidays to improve your school grades. Stay tuned. And these are the issues we'll be presenting today to our Viewpoints guests for commentary. Stephen Harper's stance on the environment. Has he thrown in the towel and jumped on the bandwagon to garner support? Another incident has put Vision TV in the controversial spotlight. This time, an offensive documentary by a Turkish author spreading propaganda against Israel. And BC is implementing a pilot project which could lead to a dramatic change in the way hospitals operate across Canada. Later on, we'll be talking about how to take advantage of the summer holidays to improve your school grades. But first, let's meet our Viewpoints guests. Rabbi Mendel Kaplan is spiritual leader of Shabbat at Flamingo, and Paul McKeever is leader of the Freedom Party of Ontario. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Christine.
A pleasure. Thank you.
The first issue we're discussing, I thought it was a very interesting topic. Now, it was taken from the Western Standard, and it's entitled, "Cool It Already." Now, this article is talking about, or perhaps, should I phrase it this way, it's a critique of Stephen Harper. Darren Warren, who wrote this article, is basically accusing him of throwing in the towel and jumping on the bandwagon, and here's why. He quotes Stephen Harper as saying, quote now, "The fight against climate change has become perhaps the biggest threat to confront the future of humanity today." Although he refers to him as being both dry and devious, he's saying that there are greater issues plaguing us. Yet he has basically thrown in the towel, and perhaps to impress people for votes, he's jumped on the environmental bandwagon, which he calls an obsession and basically nonsense scientifically. Okay, I'm going to start with you, Rabbi Kaplan. What do you think?
I mean, the first thing that I have to say is you're surprised that a politician is looking for votes?
Oh, not at all.
Are you accusing a politician of being a politician?
Good point.
Of course he's looking for votes. But, I mean, what is so bad is what I would say. Yes, it's true. I think there's a great deal of hype around this global warming business. It's just not true. I don't think that it's the greatest threat. It is important for us to clean up our environment. It is important for us to take care of our children and their children. It's not a bad thing. It's going to take a lot of sacrifice for people to change the way they live. So if you're saying to people, hey, we want you to change, you have to kind of scare them into it, which is why people say the global warming is being blown out of proportion to scare everybody into change. Okay, so Stephen Harper's playing that game. I find him to be a person who really, when it comes to important issues, doesn't waver. And doesn't just follow the bandwagon. So it doesn't bother me if he's kind of jumping on the green bandwagon. What's going to be the result of that? That the Canadian government will do more to protect the environment? That it will be a little more environmentally conscious? Okay, fine. But when it comes to issues like terrorism, when it comes to issues like abusing governmental funds, I think Stephen Harper has been very strong.
Now, that's a good point that you're making, because David Warren in this article, Cool It Already, tends to be giving the general feel that he's very disappointed in Stephen Harper's performance so far. Basically indicating in a nutshell, if you want to put it that way, from the climate of the article, that he's really achieved nothing much. Basically, he's just jumping on the bandwagon for votes, and he's done nothing with this minority government. What's your stand on that?
Well, I guess two things. One, it's sort of hard to do anything with a minority government.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But the other thing is, I think Stephen Harper had it right, although in that sentence I don't think he really intended what it meant. That is that the fight against global warming is one of the biggest threats facing mankind right now. I think that's true. That the fight itself against industrialism, against production, the whole idea of rationing electricity rather than producing more of it, I think these are all things that gravely threaten North American society. And I think that whether people are doing it because they believe in things that aren't things for which there is not any scientific evidence, Like, for example, the
I think
idea
it's about the bottom line. I'm going to be a little bit cynical here. I think it's about the bottom line for a lot of these people purporting this. And if you look at the general population, people generally are not willing to put their money where their mouth is.
That's true, and I think, you know, when you can get people scared about anything, we see this in the United States with, there are a lot of fears abound in the United States concerning attacks like happened in 9/11, and that is a very big motivating factor when you're trying to encourage people to surrender some of their freedoms. I think, likewise, when you tell people that, guess what, you're going to overheat the earth if you keep doing what you're doing, it becomes very easy to do things like, you know, redistribute wealth on a global scale, make places that were formerly, you know, vibrant economies into economies that are rationing, voluntarily putting their heads in nooses. And that's what you know, I really do share the author's sentiments there. It's quite unfortunate that the pressures are such that the Prime Minister felt that he should go down that road. And I think the disappointment in him personally on that count, on that issue, is fair game.
I'm not even sure he went down that road. I mean, if you look at it right from the beginning, he was being criticized no matter what he did. At first, when he did not so-called want to jump on the bandwagon, he said he had a Made in Canada plan. I don't see that he's really shifted from that so much. Now, this quote was made right at the beginning of the article. Yeah. A person can be quoted as saying almost anything, first of all. But when you look at his track record, he has pretty much stayed with his Made in Canada plan, and he was criticized for that. So even from that point of view, would you criticize him for jumping on the bandwagon? I mean, I know what politicians do, but would you criticize him?
I wouldn't. I personally, I don't share that sentiment. I don't think he's a horrible guy. I think he's a very decent guy. The thing that was most outstanding to me was during the war in Lebanon last summer, where Israel was being, I felt, very, very unfairly vilified. Yeah. He stood his ground, and he didn't follow the politically correct route, and I had a lot of respect for him. You know, I actually had the privilege, I considered it a privilege, to introduce him at a menorah lighting ceremony on Hanukkah on Parliament Hill. And the way I introduced the Prime Minister was with a joke about something that doesn't change. And I said, I think for the first time maybe ever in this country, there's a Prime Minister who doesn't change his colors like the chameleon.
Now, that's a good point.
Is he not a politician? Sure he is. He is a politician. Politicians, to some degree, always have to pander to public opinion, to some degree. But if that's the issue that he's pandering to, I can live with it.
But would you call him devious?
No,
he has
I don't think it's fair to call a guy like
that
devious.
He does not jump with the wind, put it that way. When the media says jump, I have to credit him for that. He does not say how high. He holds to his views. He doesn't waver as much. I mean, he is a politician. He's definitely not perfect. He's going to play the political game.
He's usually very careful with his quotes, I have to tell you.
Oh, he is. He's a thoughtful man. But you know what? He has a history of that. He has a history of that, kind of even before becoming Prime Minister.
Yeah, but you have a totally different take on it. You see, I just could disagree with you on, like, I don't think the issue is just rationing electricity. I don't think it's only about taking freedoms away or distributing wealth. I think there are some real issues.
Oh,
look! I live in the city of Vaughan, okay, and we have this. We're so green, we're glowing. Yeah. I have 4 different places to put my garbage, and quite frankly, it's a pain in the neck. Sure. I have a big family, God bless them. I have kids and everything, and I'm putting this in this box and that in that box. It's a pain in the neck. It took me time to get used to, but you know what? In the long run, I feel good about it actually. So my garbage isn't polluting the earth as much as it has to. So if that's the kind of thing that's going to get promoted, hey, I can live with that.
I suppose. Recycling is a whole different topic, I suppose.
But they're connected.
They are. I think there are legitimate things to address, things for which there's obvious physical evidence, like smog, pollution. Those things have to be addressed.
And it has been.
Right, but when the fact is that, oh yes, there's a correlation between temperature and historical temperature and CO2 levels, but it turns out that it's the other way around, that the heat precedes the CO2 increase by 800 years, then I say, well, the people who've been telling us that it was the other way around, that CO2 is causing increase in temperature, are trying to pull the wool over our eyes. I no longer believe them on the science, and I have to then suspect they're on a political mission, not
There's global warming happening on Mars. How do you explain that one?
The truth is, there's got to be somewhere in the middle. You know, in the 13th century, I think they were growing grapes in England. So obviously there were cycles. That's documented.
Yes, cycles.
There were times when it was
warmer. That are refuting this have said exactly what you said.
And all of the predictions that people have made about the world's destruction and implosion, none of them have materialized in any way, shape, or form. And another thing I want to point out to you is why I think this is a very good fight, is because the free world must get off its dependency on these little countries that have tons of oil. This is the biggest problem. If there is a greatest fight, if there's truth to that quote, the only way for us to free ourselves from the noose that the entire free world is being held up by these oil-rich countries is to develop alternative sources of energy. So if that's what he meant, I'm all for it. I mean, and I think we're 30 years late on that.
Yeah, I certainly think he's right.
Yes.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think you're dead right in terms of his position and his integrity on the Middle East. He's pro-Israel, as he should be. It is the foothold of reason in the Middle East, and I think that Canada should be taking that tack. I just wish he was as true to his guns when it came to saying, you know what, the CO2 causes global warming nonsense is just that nonsense, and we're not going to take the bait. I won't take the bait.
Well, we'll see what the future unfolds. The man's in a minority government. We've got to take that into consideration. We must go for a break now, though, and when we come back, we'll be talking about why Vision TV is in hot water again. Stay tuned.